When you think about lost media, or the lost media community, I'm sure the last thing that comes to your mind are memes. And this is because, most obviously, there's not really any overlap between lost media and memes in general. So it's not like with Sonic or Pokemon that are much easier to make memes with, and in turn, coincide more closely with meme culture. However, that's not to say the Lost Media Wiki doesn't have any memes, and if you've been in the right places, or followed the community for long enough, you've probably come across some of them before. Specifically for me, there have been a variety of different topics that I've either been a part of or heard about over the years that have gone down as memes, for the fact that they're really memorable in all the wrong ways, or really wacky in general. Though for these topics, it's not going to be so much about the searches themselves, but rather the history and origin of the topics, and how they became memes throughout the search process. Kind of a different take on the subject of lost media, but I think it'll still be fun, and many of these are nostalgic to me for better or worse, so I'll get to relive some classic meme moments. Maybe some of you guys remember these searches as well, and if you do, let me know in the comments. Let's get into the pieces of lost media that ended up becoming memes within the community. If there's one area of lost media that has historically been popular in the community, it's anything related to SpongeBob. Deleted scenes, shorts in between commercial breaks, and yes, even that DVD. But for as annoying, or even obvious as some of these topics seem nowadays, they without a doubt were popular during their initial discussion period, and gained a large following to the point where they've become classics. So would you be surprised to hear about a SpongeBob topic that didn't gain any attention, but instead became a classic meme in the lost media community? This is also one of the earliest memes from the lost media community that I can remember, and it actually has a couple different origin stories. I've said before that lost dubs are an area of content I'm not super interested in, and while I've been warming up to the category over the past year or so, I used to be very adamant in passing over any dub-related topic, though at the time I think it was definitely justified. There seemed to be an influx of people searching for really obscure dubs that just seemed like they weren't even worth finding, or were so difficult to find there couldn't possibly be a big search that surrounds them. However, that didn't stop one user from back in the day from trying to find the SpongeBob Albanian dub. As far as I can tell, this is a dub that aired in Albania and doesn't really have any notable aspects or features of it. It's simply a lost dub. But from what I've read, this one user really wanted to find it, and tried to force interest in the topic by rallying people to get them to join the search. This recurring instance, and the fact that a SpongeBob Albanian dub is so wacky to begin with, led to the community to pick up the topic as a recurring meme, and if you go back through old forum posts, you can see the sentiment that came from the strangeness of the whole thing. Though I personally don't remember it going down like this, and my experience with the meme was somewhat different. I don't have any recollection of the user that tried to get a search going, so I must have picked up on it after all this had happened. But I remember finding the article on my own and simply using the topic as an example of why I hated searching for dubs so much. It was a coincidence that I happened to share the same view about the topic without knowing the backstory at the time, and I remember referencing it for years after that. Even to this day, I'm pretty sure the older users would remember it, and I still think it acts as a great example that not all dubs are worth putting in massive search efforts for. Definitely search for what you're interested in, but not everything is going to appeal to everyone. And in the case of a SpongeBob Albanian dub, it's way more enjoyable to me as a meme than if I was able to watch content from it. Sometimes when you set out to search for a specific piece of lost media, you end up coming across several smaller parts from it that add to the mystery, and in the case of Slamfest 99, that's certainly true. This topic is about a live-action Smash Bros. Battle that was played out in costume suits hosted by Nintendo at the MGM Grand in 1999. I've covered the main topic before in a couple other videos, because the search has been going for nearly 2 years, and in that time, the On the Hunt search team has spent a lot of time digging up anything they can about the event. But since the search has been going for so long, not everyone gets caught up to speed, and sometimes the same earlier ideas keep getting brought up again, or wacky content ends up being found. The most famous meme to have come from this search is the ticket, which came attached to a Donkey Kong plush as a promotional item. This ticket and the plush that goes with it were used to promote the event, but in no way has anything to do with its production or can lead us to getting a copy. Despite this, it keeps getting brought up, which has become ridiculously funny. But there was something else that was discovered while searching for Slamfest that is more related to wacky content, was an ad for another livestream Nintendo had back in the 90s that I've never seen be discussed or even mentioned until its discovery, and needless to say, it quickly became a meme. This article comes from an issue of Game Informer magazine and describes a promotional event for the Game Boy Color, where college girls in bikinis get their body painted. The description of the event that came from the website where it was live streamed states, "Picture this, hundreds of crazy, bathing suit wearing, party ready college kids getting their bodies painted with the new Game Boy colors, kiwi, dandelion, teal, and berry. This colorful event is a bright way for college students to enjoy their time away from school." There's even a URL in the article that you can use to watch the stream, but nowadays it doesn't work, and aside from a few other mentions of the event on old Nintendo fan sites, this is another one that's been lost to time. The only documentation we have are the photos that accompany the article, which are of, you guessed it, those bathing suit wearing girls with painted bodies. What's even funnier about the title of the article, Nintendo Signals Apocalypse, and some text near the end that suggests Nintendo hosting an event like this is somehow the end of the world, I think this is one of the biggest Nintendo memes of all time. Slamfest is a bunch of costumed characters fighting inside a boxing ring to promote Smash Bros. That's some good video game history. But this is just painting girls with art that isn't even related to Nintendo or its characters at all. Why did they have this? We all had a good laugh in the On the Hunt channel when the article was found, and I'm sure if the stream did resurface, it would only be worth watching for the meme. It wouldn't be an LSSQ video without a little personal lost media sprinkled in, though despite my personal connection to this topic, it's something that I'm sure the majority of you out there can relate to, even if it's not directly related to lost media for you. And that's YouTube poop. YouTube poop is one of the most recognized categories of meme videos on the site, and its history dates all the way back to the late 2000s, which is around the time I first started watching them myself. Believe it or not, I used to be really into YouTube poops back in the early 2010s, to the point where I went out of my way to find new channels that made them and could recite so many lines from my favorite ones, which were usually related to the CDI Zelda games and Mario Head. However, as you can imagine, for a video series that is so old, and for the wide variety of different content, many have become lost over the years. This is something I see brought up from time to time, either in my comments section or even when I live stream. How old YouTube poops have fallen victim to lost media. This can happen for a few different reasons, with the most notable being claims from the owners of the content of which is being borrowed, especially in the case of popular franchises like SpongeBob. I even remember some re-edited episodes that removed the Colgate mascot, Dr. Rabbit, so it really was a gamble with what stayed and what went. Not only that, but some of these channels are so old, and just like with YouTube Lost Media in general, unless the creator keeps up with their content, it can get buried or outright deleted once they lose interest. But perhaps most difficult of all is simply remembering which YouTube poops you're looking for, if you didn't have them saved or bookmarked. There were a couple I really enjoyed and remember by name, including Link getting a job to buy a PS3 and Mario Head in Windows 7. But I know there were several others that I've never been able to find again. One of which involved Mario Head in his classic blue background with some lines about chocolate milk or orange juice, and another from SpongeBob, which has Mr. Krabs walking Mr. Doodles, to which he calls him Mr. Dude, then instead of barking, he quacks like a duck. A lot of these were pretty identical too, which adds to the confusion of trying to find a specific one. In fact, while I was writing this section of the video, I stumbled upon the old Mr. Volcano and Tyrannosaurus Alan episodes, which I had completely forgotten existed, but remember watching a lot as well. I think lost YouTube poops as a whole not only relate to the lost media side of things, but also old YouTube culture as well, which has been dying out, and is something I talked about in my YouTube Lost Media video. User-made content from over a decade ago is so prone to being deleted that YouTube poops as a whole really make it clear how unarchived content, or videos you simply watched without thinking twice about back then, can go missing so easily. Thankfully, there's still a lot of old YouTube poop content on YouTube, and even for as silly as some of the videos are, they're still funny to me and hold up well today. There are some searches that I've been a part of that few people probably remember at this point, for the fact that they're so old and the topics mostly never get brought up nowadays. And in those cases, it's fun to recollect about these older mysteries and all of the wackiness that sometimes ensued when the community was much smaller. This is exactly how I describe one of the first topics I looked into back in 2015 when I was first getting into Lost Media. It was on the old wiki before we moved to a separate website, and I've never forgotten about this topic, not only for its weirdness, but also for the experience in searching for it, which was equally weird. It's about a series of VHS tapes that were sold exclusively at McDonald's, fittingly called The Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald. These were cartoons animated by Klasky Csupo and were released on 6 different tapes back in the early 2000s, though even back in 2015 were pretty obscure. However, the first 5 tapes were available to watch online and could even be found on eBay if you wanted a physical copy for yourself. But the 6th tape, titled The Legend of McDonaldland Lock, was completely lost. It's not known why exactly this tape was so much harder to find, but a pretty decent search formed around trying to track down a copy. I followed the search in the comments section and hoped that someone would end up finding a copy until one user showed up and claimed they did. People gave this user a lot of attention and encouraged them to rip their tape, but somehow there always seemed to be a problem when it came to getting it online. This is when the search started to enter meme territory, and soon enough the comments section became a dumpster fire. There was this idea that the user who claimed to have the tape didn't actually have it and was saying they did for attention, while the other side claimed people were being too impatient, causing the rip to purposely be delayed. I remember how much division this caused in the search, and the debate in the comments section is still something I remember following. And in fact, if you look at the comments section for that same article today, you can see most of the debate. The search became more about who actually had it and who didn't have it, rather than trying to rip a copy. Eventually, another user came forward and showed clear proof they owned the tape, and shortly after, it was ripped on YouTube, which sent the other user away. It's believed that they didn't actually have the tape, and the screenshots they provided at the time were taken from another source. I was never really too interested in these McDonald's tapes to begin with, but it was the comments section about it that really became memorable for me, and I always laugh about how insignificant the whole debate seemed. It's definitely not something I've ever seen in the community since, and to me, it'll always feel more like a meme because of that. You guys knew it was coming. You all knew it was coming. So I hope I didn't disappoint you by saving the best for last. But this wouldn't be a Lost Media meme video without talking about the king of Lost Media memes, the ancient beast himself, Kek Rock. Believe it or not, it'll be 6 years this summer since having made my first and only video on Kek Rock, but I'd like to take this segment and relive the memories of first having discovered his existence. I remember it was early summer 2016, and I hadn't been in the Lost Media community for too long at that point, only a year or so, and it was also about a year before my videos blew up and people started watching my content. This was the era of the old wiki, from before we gained our own website, so not only was the community a lot smaller, but the ways of communication with each other were too. If you were around for this iteration of the site, you probably remember the Shoutmix chat, which was the main hub for discussion at the time. I spent a lot of time in this area of the site back then, and would check it frequently as a way to see what people were interested in researching and discussing. Well, on that early summer day back in 2016, I was getting ready to leave for a game of tennis with my friends, and right before I went, I checked the Shoutmix to see what was up for the day, and I saw several people mention a lost Sega Genesis game from the early 90s called Kek Rock, with some attached box art of the game. But it wasn't just discussion that the game had existed, people were speculating on whether or not it was real at all. But before I could contribute anything to the conversation, I had to leave for my game of tennis. But let me tell you, from that brief moment I had heard the name Kek Rock, and being unable to research it until I got back home, he stuck in my head for the entire day. While I was waiting for my friends to pick me up, Kek Rock. While we were playing tennis, Kek Rock. Afterwards, we got Dairy Queen, Kek Rock. It was all about Kek Rock, and in my head, I became obsessed with this idea that somehow a Sega Genesis game had existed as far back as 1993 and nobody had documented it. Later on, when I got home that night, I took a deep dive into the topic, gathered all the information that was available at the time, and released my video shortly after. And only then did I gain more context about what Kek Rock really was. I had heard from some higher ups in the wiki that Kek Rock wasn't a lost game, but a subject of controversy, as apparently he had been part of a ruse to get the site to host an article about him. This was not received well, and around that time there was a Kek Rock ban in the wiki. You couldn't say anything about him, or you'd risk suspicion that you were part of the original ruse. But eventually, the presence of Kek Rock became less of an issue, and he did find his way back into the community once my video gained popularity, and the character became connected to my presence. I think it's cool that Kek Rock found some redemption, and has actually led to a whole fandom surrounding him, which I'm sure became many other people's gateway into Lost Media as a whole. I think that's kind of the message of all this meme Lost Media. Even though they have wacky stories attached to them, and some of them might not be taken as seriously as others, it's still a means of discovery for new people to get into Lost Media, and I personally think it's cool that so much lore has come from it. I'm sure as the community grows, there will be more memes and memories to come from the experiences people have in searching for all the different kinds of Lost Media that's out there. I never thought I would be talking about the SpongeBob Albanian dub after all the years it's been since the topic first showed up, and nonetheless, in a positive and nostalgic way. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other game-related Lost Media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, thin. How old YouTube poops have... I can't even say that without laughing about it.